So my number three is this Bollywood movie called Dil Chahta Hai, 2001. The title Dil Chahta Hai basically translates into what the heart wants or what the heart desires, something like that. Directed by Farhan Akhtar, starring Amir Khan, Saif Ali Khan, Akshay Khanna, Dimple Kabadia, and a whole bunch of other people. A quick logline on the movie. Three inseparable childhood friends are just out of college. Nothing comes between them until they each fall in love, and their wildly different approaches to relationships creates tension, which is pretty accurate, I would say. But I watched this movie with my college buddies when this movie came out. So we were
Oh, that's
sort
cool.
of,
Those
yeah, it
guys,
was
basically.
yeah, basically, yeah, we were in the prime age for when this movie came out. And I'll
Uh-huh.
get into why this movie matters, not just to people of that age group, but kind of redefined Bollywood movie making and was
Oh,
such a huge wave in terms of, storytelling and fashion and sort of showing contemporary modern India, modern relationships, the music, the styling. Like movies didn't look like this over there
mm.
before this movie. And then everything changed right
Oh,
after,
wow.
and people were wanting to go out and wear clothes, and all of that sort of started to happen as a result of this movie. So it was a huge cultural phenomenon. But on a personal level, yeah, this movie sort of represents that critical time when you're graduating and all you know is school, your friends, and
Hmm.
home life and parents and such. Then suddenly you have to sort of grow up and figure out, who are you, what do you want, and how do these relationships that you've been in with friends mature or not mature. And it's sort of a pretty critical, nerve-wracking time, and I definitely went through that with my friends, kind of graduating school and then undergrad actually, and then
Hmm.
obviously leaving the country. That changed everything,
Oh,
right, in
yeah.
terms of friendships and relationships. And so it's about friendships and relationships, but also, like we've been saying, with coming of age, it always comes back to your own emotional journey and your own growth of what do you value, how do you see yourself in your life. So yeah, that's what this movie stands. I assume you had not watched or heard this about
That
this movie
you,
before.
you assume correct. I had not
Yes.
heard of or seen this. So it'd be interesting actually. I'd love to hear more as you get into it about before or after in terms of Bollywood films. I always find it fascinating when there's like that one film that'll come out and sort of change not only the game when it comes to how movies are made, but the culture too. It sounds like it did
Yeah.
both. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, I thought it was okay. I personally
Yeah.
I it was a it's actually I wish I'd known about the cultural impact before I'd seen it. I might have looked at it through that lens of like there wasn't anything like this at the time in terms of what it was showing. Because now that you're saying this, I can even see how okay in terms of what the different topics that they're talking about and yeah, it's a there's some heightened reality, but it's also pretty grounded, honestly, of a lot of the things that
Hmm.
they're kind of going through. And I definitely could relate a lot to when you go off to school and you have these friends, and then what happens? Are you still going to be as close? You're all going off in different lives. How do your lives, do they come back together? How do they come back together? How are you still relating to friends when, I mean, one of the characters moves off to Australia and isn't
Hmm.
around anymore with either of his friends? Like, how do you stay close? I also went off to, left Boston and come to California, not as far away as like Sydney was from India, but still, like I kind of knew what that was like. So I definitely could relate to a lot of things that were going on. I just wasn't as engaged in the story as the film went on. Yeah, I'd love to hear more about how this film was like. What was it like? What were the movies like before, or how this impacted the culture?
I think you kind of touched on that, which is the heightened reality, but yet keeping it grounded. Because I think
Mm-hmm.
movies before this were, primarily escapes, and they were heightened realities you could identify with certain aspects, but nothing sort of stared at you like this, unless it was quote unquote an art film, something that was
Okay.
kind of low budget and kind of made outside of the Bollywood studio system, if you will. Otherwise, movies were meant to be escapes and for as many people as possible, right? Versus
Mm-hmm.
this is one of those movies where, yeah, it is heightened reality. There are, dance numbers and it's melodramatic and everything, but then it's also, fairly grounded, and people
Mm-hmm.
are, dealing with real themes. So that was one big one. The second big one, I think, was just speaking to this new generation, because, this is the internet generation, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
So, and by then, economically, India had opened its borders for foreign investment and such. So there was a lot of foreign influx of products, and the first wave of kind of multinational companies were coming in, and call centers were
Mm,
being set up, and as a result, people were getting more and more exposed to foreign culture. People were traveling more. It was just starting, right? So this
interesting.
movie came right at that time and sort of exploded. Like, it was the first movie speaking to that generation that was, going through these life changes, if you will. Not that there weren't, movies focused on teens and people graduating before. They
Hmm.
were,
Hmm.
but I think this was, at least for our generation, kind of a big kind of punch in the face, if you will. And yeah, it is about romance, and because I mean, all Bollywood movies stereotypically end up being about love and romance, and
Hmm.
that's a big part of this movie. But I think that the main relationship of this movie is between the three guys.
Right.
And
Yep.
I think that's also a little bit unusual, that the thing that propels the movie, the thing that breaks the movie in its sort of kind of narrative arc, is about the friendships. And I think
Right.
that was a little bit unusual as well. And then performance wise, so Amir Khan, who goes to Australia, he
Mm.
was the biggest star, one of the big stars. He still is, I would say. And I kind of equate him a little bit to the Tom Hanks
Okay.
kind of persona. He started in these kind of, you know, teen movies and fun movies, and kind of was a jokester of sorts, but then kind of turned into this really deep actor. And at this point, he's probably the one sort of methody actor, if you will, if that's even
Oh,
a
okay.
thing. He was in Lagan, which was Oscar nominated and such. So for him to be in a movie like this, where he's this kind of, larger than life persona who's kind of annoying and irritating, but also charming and
Right.
such, the soul patch does not hold well at
Well,
all. It
that
was
that
like,
dated it in a cool way.
oh,
I was
I
like,
was like,
oh,
take that
nice.
off, take that,
I remember the
you
early
know,
2000s.
oh,
Yeah.
very bad. So he's sort of that, but then the other guy, who's Sev, who's Samir, who's kind
Oh,
of
yes.
this sort of bumbling idiot sort of person, but yet has a heart of gold. Like, he hadn't really had a big movie success until then, and this movie kind of showcased him in as an actor, like somebody who can play this, fairly grounded person. And Akshay, who's the third guy, he also was fairly new on the scene, and he was sort of the position as kind of this mature thinking man's actor, if you will. So there's a good, there's something for everybody. So that was the big thing, as us, as kids, or college, not kids, I guess, but college graduates, like going and
Yeah.
watching this movie, everybody was picking who's who. And
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
course, was the thinking
Oh.
person. And I was like,
No
oh,
soul patch, huh?
yeah,
Yeah,
not
you
so,
don't
no
have a
soul
soul
patch.
patch, huh? No, no.
No soul patch. No, no, I was not into that even then. But so everyone was kind of taking sides
Oh,
of
that's
who is
cool.
who in that movie. And I was like, oh, I'm the Sid of this kind of group, who's like thinking and is mature. And of course, it's not true, but that's what I believed.
That's funny. Actually, as you're talking about all this, I mean, I don't know if it's like an exact kind of one-to-one comparison, but it just makes me think a lot of a movie we actually already covered on the podcast for Boys in America. I'll just say boys, but American
Mm.
Pie, which came out
Yeah,
in 99, around the same time too. I was
right.
also graduated from high school, like the kids were in that movie, start a lot of careers, and it was a lot of similar discussions. Obviously, again, the themes were very, very different. It was
Yeah,
more
a little bit more
Americanized.
sexual.
Right, because that's America. That's what
Yeah.
we do with things. But as you're talking about this, like, oh, that movie actually came to mind a lot in terms of, for my generation on this side of the Pacific, a movie that was similar-ish in terms of how it defined a lot of moments,
Yeah.
which that's also a coming of age movie too. So maybe this is like an Indian American Pie in a certain way,
Yeah.
not. And again, not to compare, but
No,
that's
you're right. I
what's
never thought of it, but I think there are definitely parallels there. And I don't think we'd had a movie like this, like I said before.
Mhm.
But then I think the truth is that you, at least watching it again, I had not watched this movie since that time, because
Oh,
this
really?
was,
Wow.
yeah, it had
Oh,
been so long. And
yeah.
it was so ingrained in my consciousness that I remembered so much of these songs. I used to sing with my
Hmm.
school or college band, and I sang so many of these songs on
Oh,
stage,
cool.
and won prizes or lost prizes and such. It was so ingrained in my life, this movie, that I just then took a break from it. So it was
Hmm.
kind of emotional to watch it again, and took me back to all those people and those times and everything. The movie, of course, it doesn't hold up, obviously, because of where
Cool.
we're all at. It's of very much of that time. It's
Oh, right. I see what you're saying.
it drags quite a bit and such. But there's still some things, maybe because I have such a personal connection with it, and I'm sure
Sure.
people listening to this also do, that you can't help, like some of those jokes really land on you. They're still evergreen in my mind, like what Samir says when they're at celebrating Akshay's older woman friend's
Oh,
birthday thing, where he says that, we'll go to eat cake anywhere. That's a very kind of, cultural zeitgeist line that still, I think, holds up. So there's many such moments that
yeah.
hold up. um, and then I think what I discovered watching the movie this time was that there's a little bit of all of those three in most of us, coming
Hmm.
of age at that time, or I guess maybe any time, which is that there's a rambunctious side of you that has to grow up and take, ownership of your actions and be responsible.
Hmm.
There's sort of this romantic idealistic person who's just falling for whatever. You have to grow up and think about, well, what does being in a relationship and actually loving somebody mean? And
Hmm.
then the third one, which is that, yeah, you kind of intellectual but very deeply emotional, but you're also kind of lost. You can't just go to some like remote art community and just live there. I mean, I guess you can, but it, there are consequences. Like, you can't
Right.
just be a loner isolated person and be okay with loving somebody, and whether or not they love you back or no. Like, there's a
Hmm.
lot that comes with it. So I think there's a little bit of everybody, all of those three guys in us. So I think that struck me, and I think movie does a very good job of, I think, of detailing those journeys that those three people have, and what does that mean for their friendships.
Yeah, definitely three key archetypes. And another thing you were mentioning there too, which is around consequences, and that was a big theme that I got from this film too, which is that all these, when they were kids or in the beginning of the movie, they sort of were not thinking about consequence of any of the decisions they
Hmm.
were making. And one of the things that, as I've come of age, you learn that every action you have has consequences, negative or positive. And unlike when you're a kid, who if you make a mess or make a mistake, there's someone to help you clean it up, or maybe your parents will come in and help solve the problem for you. But when you're an adult, you have to deal with the consequences of your own actions, and no one else to do it for you. And I was sort of tracking these three characters through this film and realizing that as they went and learned that you can't go back and redo things you did. All you have to do is pick up the pieces and move forward. And what does that mean? I think each one of them was learned that lesson in different ways based on the decisions that they made throughout the film.
No, totally. And especially Akash, Amir's character. Like, he's
Oh
actually
yeah,
quite rude and mean to his friends
he
throughout
is. Yeah.
at their expense. And he finally apologizes to even Samir, not just Sid, because there
Hmm.
he totally bungles things up. But he has this recognition later that, yeah, like you said, you can't just, walk through life without any consequences,
Right, right. And they all learn
especially
that
the
by the
people
end.
that you love,
Of
apparently.
course, right, exactly, right, right. I think that's something that he doesn't realize in the
No.
beginning of the film, and then he takes him a long time to really realize. He has to go through life and then realizing, oh, actually, I made this mistake, and part of that is going back and apologizing and trying to. That shows his love, I think, that
Yeah.
he puts the effort into trying to patch that up instead of just walking away.
The other thing that kind of I'd forgotten about this movie was, so the girl who's always fawning over Akash, who's
Oh
kind of
yeah.
positioned as this kind of, irritating, annoying person. I totally forgotten that she has a scene in Goa at the beach with Sid's character, where Sid asks her that, why are you after him? You're beautiful, you're smart, you're intelligent, you can make your own choices. And she's sort of like, well, I want him, and why won't he want me back? I'd forgotten that moment. And I think this is where what you said up front, like, there are sort of stereotypical melodramatic heightened reality things, but then they're also kind of grounded real things. I think that's
Hmm.
what makes this movie pretty special. Also, I have to mention that this is the guy who directed it, who ended up becoming an actor in his own right.
Hmm.
Is a very good actor for an actor. It's his first movie directing anything, which is
Oh wow.
kind of amazing. I mean, of course, everybody in this movie comes from a film family, including the people who made it, because that's just how things are. But he
Hmm.
does come from a very talented family of, his father is a well-renowned writer, stepmother is a well-renowned actress and such. So he has a lot of great pedigree behind him. But that was the other thing, like, to your question of why this movie hit so hard. It was young people. Like, the guy who
Hmm.
directs it is probably younger or the same age as the three leads.
Oh,
You know,
wow.
it's like a young guy directing this movie. His producer is also like a young buddy of his, and it's just young people making something with, of course, a
For
lot
young
of
people. Yeah.
backing behind them from
Sure,
their
sure.
families. But yeah,
But that does mean something. I mean, I can imagine it's like that extra textual meaning behind it.
yeah,
It's like this is a film that speaks to us, our
exactly.
generation, by our generation, not
Yeah,
for us. It's by us, for us, instead of just for us.
exactly.
I could see that
Exactly.
definitely resonating a lot, and understanding why this was such a cultural phenomenon. I guess I should have read the Wikipedia page before I saw this movie to understand that, because I just kind of went in seeing it. But now that I hear everything that you're saying, I can look back and see that how different that this movie must have felt.
Oh yeah,
Time.
exactly. And then personally, watching at that time, there are all these questions that, oh, what's going to happen to me? Like, am I going to be the one who moves abroad and is totally lonely and and life is going to suck? Or am I the one who will meet their person of their dreams? Or am I the one who will make something out of a hobby or a deep rooted passion that I have? Like, that's what the movie did, at least for me. And then what does that mean for my friendships? Are they all going to stay or no? I'm sure most people watching this movie at that time had similar kind of questions about life. And so it hit us at the exact right time.
No, it sounds like it. Like you were of the right age for
Yeah.
this movie to hit when it hit, and you were that generation that it spoke to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey there, it's Alex. If you like the review and discussion Karan and I just had, make sure you subscribe to our channel, Movies That Shaped Us, to get full episodes. Every other Wednesday, Karan and I cover a topic around important people, places, events, and moments in our lives, and then explore it through 3 of our favorite movies. Subscribe right now, or follow our podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts via the link in the description below. Hope you join us for the journey.